in hopes of dying. Welcome to my dark side.
Early in the morning, Nishino Akane wakes up with the help of her alarm and takes a shower before checking out herself in the mirror. And she looks gorgeous. Afterwards, she gets prepared for the day at school, but she sees flashes of paparazzi as soon as she opens the door. Her personal driver snaps her out of the trance and takes her to school, where she's welcomed by most of the students. However, she soon spots Kageno, a boy she hates because of his ordinary looks and below-average grades. And so begins this love story, hopefully. She greets him and he returns the gesture, but calls her Nishimura, which doesn't sit well with Nishino, even though she hides it with a smile. She reminds Kageno that her name isn't Nishimura multiple times, causing Kageno to apologize. He reveals that he's pretty good at remembering the names of all the important characters, but he's not so good at remembering named NPC. He then adds that he hasn't got much sleep and calls her Nishitani. She gets angry once again and corrects him before revealing her actual name. But Kageno once again gets it wrong and calls her Nishimura as he leaves, which infuriates her. While she watches Kageno leave, Akane notes that she doesn't despise him even though he got her name wrong. But she hates him because he never looks at her. Although his eyes are always facing her direction, even though he got her name looking somewhere far away. But she hates him because he never looks at her. Although his eyes are always facing her direction, they seem to be looking somewhere far away. In class, Akane gets all the attention, but she avoids associating with Kageno as he's always acting weird. It turns out Akane took a break from show business due to a scandal back in middle school. Ever since that incident, Akane has been hiding behind a mask she has created. She plays the part of being the teacher's favorite and the most popular girl in school in order to get everyone to like her as she tries her best not to be hated by anyone. Akane was in middle school. She had to take a break from the show business due to a scandal. Elsewhere, Kageno reads a mysterious book and tries to learn its content to gain more power. After school, Akane calls her driver to pick her up from school, but he doesn't pick her up because he has been attacked by some thugs. After waiting for a long time, Akane is forced to walk home late at night, which is her first time doing so since the incident in middle school. On her way home, she's attacked by the same men that beat up her driver. She tries to run away, but they catch up to her in no time and kidnap her. She starts to lose consciousness after being drugged, but she sees Kageno approaching. Shortly after, Akane gains consciousness and realizes that she's tied up in some warehouse. One of the kidnappers reminds her that the daughter of Nishino Zabatsu shouldn't walk alone at night as her father has lots of enemies. While he talks, his accomplice informs her that she just needs to stay there quietly and that she will be freed once the ransom payment has been made, which leads to an argument amongst the thugs. Meanwhile, Kageno watches the kidnapper before he changes his clothes and puts on a mask. Soon after, one of the kidnappers tries to have some fun with Akane and reminds her of the first time she was kidnapped by a stalker, causing her to remember the tragic events. She tries to resist him, but he hits her and prepares to have his way with her. However, Kageno comes crashing down through the roof window, revealing that he is a stylish ruffian slayer, which makes the kidnappers angry. He pulls out a gun, but Kageno attacks them with a piece of glass, injuring his arm and disarming him in the process. He then engages the thug in battle, knocking him to the ground and smashing his face brutally. And I thought he was supposed to be doing the smash, shing. The other kidnapper sees that Kageno isn't an ordinary man and states that he has been bored as hell being a kidnapper, with amateur since he was released from the army. He then takes out a knife after dropping his gun and attacks Kageno, who is excited to fight an ex-military officer. After getting cut on the arm, Kageno manages to disarm the man with a crowbar, but he still gets dominated. With no other option left, he decides to get serious and show the thug the potential he found in crowbars. After fighting bikers that disrupted the peace of the city, Kageno turns the fight around and stabs the thug with a crowbar, making him realize that Kageno is Balaclava Berserker. A man who has been fighting the bikers with crowbars. Kageno then reveals that the bikers started wearing helmet in order to protect themselves, prompting him to stop using the crowbars like Tonfa, but as a regular club instead. Kageno launches at the criminal. He breaks his leg and beats him up brutally as a watches in horror. After ending the man's life, Kageno frees Akane and tells her to be more careful next time. But she doesn't realize that she was rescued by Kaiganu. Not long after, she calls the police and her father uses his connections to prevent the case from going public. The following morning at school, Akane spots Kaiganu and greets him with a smile on her face. He greets her back, calling her Nishino. But she doesn't realize that he got her name right and tries to correct him. Surprised, Akane feels like Kaiganu is finally looking at her and deduces that he's also living a life behind a mask. However, the next day, the news reported that Minoru Kaiganu has been hit by a truck and did not survive. In the past, Kaiganu has always dreamt of being a hero and spent his days training. But at school, he was just a background character. Although Kaiganu reached a point in his training where he can beat up some guys, he's helpless in front of an armed man. Kaiganu decides to become the best martial arts in the world in order to beat up those armed men, but he's still unable to do anything about a missile. Despite having no superpowers, Kaiganu wants to overcome those limits and save the world by becoming a powerful being. After being hit by a truck, Kaiganu is reborn into a new world and forms an organization. With his squad and newly acquired magical powers, Kaiganu prepares to start a mission. He states that he wants to be the one who operates from the shadows, showing everyone their greatness. The eminence in shadow, even though he wants more power. Later on, Alpha reports to Kaiganu, now known as Sid, stating that he was telling the truth and that she found a description of the cult of Diabolas. Many years ago, after dying in a car accident, Minoru Kaiganu is reborn as the son of Baron Kaiganu, an aristocrat living out in the boonies. Despite being so young, Kaiganu quickly understands his new world and senses that there is magic in the air. Kaiganu's new family has been making dark knights who can enhance their abilities using magic. And they have high hopes for Claire Kaiganu, Sid's older sister, who is quite talented. Sid grows up as a background character, being an average knight, and tries not to draw any attention to him. But he comes out at night and fights bandits. With a Slimesword and bodysuit in his possession, he easily kills the bandits and takes their treasure. Shortly after, he finds a cage with a rotting creature and quickly realizes its potential as the magical creature it possesses. Sid takes the monster home where he shoots it with magic and performs other experiments on it as he tries to contain the magic overload. After a month, Sid succeeds in containing the magical overload and the creature returns to its normal form, a young, beautiful woman elf. Trying to make a good first impression and recruit the elf into his team, Sid decides to put on an act as she regains consciousness. He informs the elf that broke the curse that has been put on her and all her heroes' descendants. He then shows her a fictional book about 3 heroes who defeated Diabolas, but the demon placed a curse on them with his dying breath. Furthermore, he explains that the cult of Diabolas is plotting to revive the demon, even though most people have forgotten about Diabolas. He then introduces himself as Shadow, who lurks in the shadow and hunts shadows, preventing the cult from raising their master. After making up the whole story, Sid asks her if she would join him, and she agrees to help him fight the darkness, having lost everything. However, she explains that they need to find more heroes' descendants like her and expand their organization. Sid agrees and names the organization Shadow Garden and calls the elf Alpha. 3 years after, 13-year-old Sid practices with his sister and lets her defeat him, even though he's stronger than her. Claire is now 15 years old, which is the age that the nobles start attending the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights. However, on the day of her departure to a new school, Claire disappears, leaving her room in a mess. Meanwhile, Alpha has collected more members for its organization in the past 3 years. After discovering that his sister is missing, Sid asks Beta about Alpha's location, and she reveals that Alpha is looking for a clue that will help them find Claire. Beta explains that Claire is probably still alive, but she has been kidnapped by a high-ranking member of the cult of Diabolas as they believe that Claire is one of the hero descendants. Beta then takes out a map and states that although the cult has a few unknown hideouts, she doesn't know the hideout Claire is being held in. While she talks, Sid makes a slam knife and throws it at the map. He misses the hideout completely, but states that they will find his sister there. Beta then figures out the cryptograms are a bluff, as there's a secret hideout at the location pointed out by Sid, and he tells her to contact the 7 shadows. Elsewhere at the hideout, this Count Gree keeps Claire bound with magic sealing chains. He states that her father taught her how to fight, but Claire confesses that she developed her skills by fighting her brother. Gree then asks if he healed her when she showed signs of possession, but Claire denies it, stating there is no way a weakling like Sid can heal her.